Hi, it's Maggie with Golden Lights Within, and I'm back with another video today about grounding. So this is something that I've recently started to do. And if you're not familiar with grounding, it's essentially walking barefoot on the earth. So, walking barefoot in the dirt or the grass. And the reason that I started looking into this is because, I'm really interested in learning more about the circadian rhythms, and grounding really is part of that process. So if you've seen some of my other videos about, morning sunlight, daytime sunlight, evening sunlight, all those videos are talking about basically giving your body these cues from the sun throughout the day so that it can optimize the body clocks and things can run efficiently and smoothly. So when you think about wanting to give your body, more and more information about where it is in the environment and what's going on so that it can run efficiently, it would make sense that grounding would be part of that and something that you would also want to implement. The other thing I'll say with this is that, for me, when trying out these concepts, I'm always like, what would be the downside? Obviously, provided that you're like looking down and making sure you're not stepping on like glass or something like that. Of course, be careful. But, for me, taking off my shoes and walking in the grass, if there are potential benefits, why not try it? And then, of course, it makes sense, with circadian rhythms and giving your body those cues. And then there also is science literature that is behind it as well. But, in these videos, I'm talking more about my experiences with it and how I'm implementing it. So again, if you just think about it from a basic level of giving your body more information about where it is in the environment is really important. And so you can do that by just being barefoot and going outside. There also is the point about, when your feet are touching the earth, you are in contact with this pool of free electrons. And when you have free radicals in your body that are unstable, that can cause inflammation and, problems with your cells and tissues, these free electrons can stabilize those free radicals. And then, you're going to have less inflammation, and it has that more antioxidant effect on your body. So that's the other side of it that you can look more into. I am, not a professional on that. I'm just more so, again, just talking about my experiences with it and what I've learned, but just as like a basic thing that you can start to look into, that would be really helpful if, as a starting point. So that's just kind of about what grounding is. So again, bare feet on the ground, you can be touching a tree or something rooted in the ground. And then, those 2 points about how it can help you, right? So the free electrons, and then also giving your body cues about where it is in the environment. So that's kind of, why I've started it. And again, like I said, why not? And honestly, it feels really good. I remember as a kid, I would always be barefoot and like running around in the grass. And so in some ways it just makes me feel more childlike, like I'm exploring my environment, and it's more fun. And I don't know how to describe it, but it just feels good, right? It feels good to have your bare feet, on the cool grass in the summer, walking around. So at the very least, a new sensory experience for you. But like I said, it does make sense that this is giving your body more cues about where it is. And I think that we all just, with the circadian rhythm, type information, I think we all just intuitively know it makes sense, right? It makes sense that we would want to give our bodies cues from the sun or the earth, right? It just, it's just innate, right? It just seems like part of us. And so that's where I come from with that, that I just feel like it's natural, and it's just maybe a more holistic thing to add to our routine. So ways that I do this. So I like to just set a goal for myself. And of course, stress isn't good. So if you can't, make it to your goal one day, it's not the end of the world, right? But I just set a goal for 15 minutes per day of just time grounding with my feet on the earth, bare feet on the earth. And so that's just kind of the time that I've set for myself, and I try to hit that daily. So however that looks, and I'll go into some ways that I do that, but my number one tip is just to kind of set a time for yourself. So maybe start out with just even a few minutes per day. So start really low, just like a lot of these things that you're learning about, like the sun cues as well. Just start slow and build from there as you learn more. You don't need to overwhelm yourself and have this like crazy protocol that you need to follow. And the point too is that it's intuitive, right? So just, if you're wearing your sandals and you're in a spot you can ground, just like take them off for a second, stand in the grass. It doesn't have to be this like, okay, at this time I need to take my sandals off and I just need to like turn my timer on and sit there in the grass, right? Like make it a nice experience. That's also part of it, right? We want to enjoy the journey of things. It's not just this end point of like, I've achieved this like perfect health, but it was miserable along the way. We want it to be fun and intuitive and just like enjoying that journey and that experience, and that in and of itself, right, is going to make you healthier. Your body's going to feel safer. So again, I just can't stress enough, make it fun, make it intuitive, but just, again, start with whatever, for me, it's 15 minutes right now. That might change at a different season of my life. And if I can only get a few minutes or nothing at all one day, it's not a big deal. So just having, a time in mind, I think that kind of helps you aim for something, and that's good to kind of have a goal. So that's how I do it. And I think that, pairing that with a routine. So whether that's the sunrise, which is really great. Again, if you think about in the morning, getting that sun cue where you're at, and go check out my other videos, the morning sunlight one, if you're curious about that. But again, pairing it. So maybe you do your grounding at sunrise, or you do it at sunset, or you do it a little bit of both. Or if you're eating, you work from home and you're eating lunch outside, you just take your shoes off and have your feet on the ground while you're eating, right? So it doesn't even have to be this like separate thing. It can be while you're doing, a habit that you already have, which actually works a lot better. So for me, I aim for that time. And, for me, that looks like I go on a walk with my dog in the morning. So I just use that time to ground. And it's really hot outside right now, so our walks are not super long, and she's an older dog, so we go slow, so it's kind of like perfect for the grounding. Like I don't have my phone, and I get in like 15 to 30 minutes of grounding easily in the morning doing that. So it's like I'm getting some exercise and movement, getting the sun cue in the morning, and I'm getting my grounding all in one. So again, and it's an enjoyable experience with my dog. So again, just thinking about how you can get that time in a way that's meaningful and fun for you, and not this like, strained, like you're setting a timer and like sticking your feet in the ground and like waiting. Like you don't want it to be like that. So again, I do it in a way that I can do that walk with my dog and get that time in the morning, and that's how I hit that 15 minutes usually daily. So the second point that I wanted to go over that I think is really important to understand, well, I know it's very important to understand because you can't ground if you're not on the right surface. So when I say surface, right, like obviously the dirt, the grass, like you are obviously, in direct contact with the earth. But surfaces like asphalt don't allow it, the way it insulates you from the earth. So there's like that layer in between that doesn't allow that electron flow or your body to get those cues from the ground. So it's important to know that, because if you're like, I'm getting my grounding in, and you are walking on a lot of trails actually are asphalt trails. And so I wanted to make sure I noted that because I did that for a while at first. I was, it wasn't, it's not like a bad thing, right? But I wasn't getting the benefits of it. So, obviously the safer choices are the dirt, sand, grass. However, concrete can be a great option too, unless they insulate it with some layer like plastic or something in between the earth and the concrete. And, do your best. You don't need to stress about it. Just, if you can be on the grass or the dirt or the sand, then concrete would be like your next option. And then asphalt wouldn't be a way you could ground. So those are kind of like, for me, the main things I like to keep in mind. And to be honest, like on my walks in the morning, I am on the concrete a lot of the time. And so it just works out that way. But just knowing that information and knowing your options, I think, is really important. So I would say, that's tip number 2, is to just kind of understand the different surfaces that you're grounding on and to aim for, obviously the more natural, the better. So the dirt, the grass, the sand, then concrete, and, avoiding asphalt. So that is point number 2. And then the third thing that I do just as part of grounding more, and this goes into, they all layer and make sense together. So in another video, I talked about how to be more present in nature, and then another video about how to be more present on your walk. So you can check those out as well. And that really goes hand in hand with this point. But I try to get out to the nature, trails, like dirt trails, kind of more in the woods, 2 to 3 times a week is my goal. And I look at that as, the same as like trying to get 8 hours of sleep and trying to eat, whole foods, less processed foods. Like it's part of being a healthy person and having a, healthy outlook on things. I look at that grounding and getting out to those nature trails as part of, my mental and physical health. So not only just being present, but it's a great time to just be on, the dirt trails. I don't have as many dirt trails like close by, so I have to make it kind of more of a point in my schedule to go out there. But that's where I can get more extended time, like out nature, out in the woods, and have my phone on airplane mode or off and be grounding. So bare feet on the dirt. And I always feel like when I come back from doing that, I always feel so good. So again, I think it's like one of those things that you just have to go out and try and see for yourself, have an open mind, and just really assess, like, how do I feel? Maybe it will take a couple, more than one time, but just being open to trying something like this that's free and natural. And, it just, from my point of view, it just makes intuitive sense that our bodies would need more of those cues about our surroundings, about our environment. And again, what's the downside of just giving it a try? So those are the 3 things that I do. So just as a recap, I set an amount of time that I aim for per day. I don't stress if I don't hit that time. For me right now, I try to aim for 15 minutes per day, and I pair that like with a walk with my dog. But you could just do the sunrise, sunset, your lunch break, whatever works for you. So start small and build, but do have that goal. I think it's good to have the intention and goal. Second point is to know the surface that you're grounding on. So aiming for, grass or just dirt or sand. You can aim for concrete if that's really all that's accessible. And then, avoiding the asphalt. So understanding the surface that you're grounding on, just think about direct contact with earth and not having a layer that insulates you from the earth between you and the earth, or just the main points with that. And then the third point is that I go out on, more of a dirt nature trail, more out in the woods a few times. I aim to do it 2 to 3 times per week, and look at that as like, getting in a workout in the same light as getting in a workout or eating nutritious foods or getting good sleep. I just see that as, again, just part of that holistic outlook that I have to have a good well-being and feel the best I can. So those are the main 3 points. And then I did want to note, there are grounding shoes and sandals on the market. I personally haven't tried any of them, not opposed to it, would love to try at some point. I do know that direct contact with the earth is best. Not saying that those aren't good or they don't, have a place, but, for me, I'm like, if I'm going to intentionally have that time grounding with the earth, or grounding on the earth, then I'm just going to go barefoot. But again, not opposed to it. You can obviously do your research and look those up. I don't necessarily have a recommendation because I haven't tried it myself, but just to know that that is out there for you. And again, I just want to reiterate, these are my personal experiences, knowledge that I've, self-taught knowledge, and, I'm not a medical doctor. So if you are concerned or want to implement some part of this into your health routine, you can always ask those questions to your medical doctor. But I really appreciate you listening, and I hope that this helps on your health journey. Again, I'm just sharing what's worked for me on my path, and I really hope that it benefits you as well. So thank you for listening to Golden Lights Within, and I will see you in the next video.